society at any time period, the judgmental ideas people have for youth differ to some extent, but evidently the stereotype is similar. Taking in consideration of the time period of when this novel was written, the apartheid era was a time of division and separation. In Afrikaans, apartheid literally means aparthood. When the Europeans first took over the division of land and tribes, that was when the apartheid era first started. In relation to our topic, the land was broken into two categories, blacks and whites. In correlation to youth and age, the young are part of this division. This is mostly heard of when Kumalo was first introduced to the area and the people who vacated. Sadly, one of the old priestess findings is during a conversation between Mr. Mufalo and Mr. Minsumagu. They talked of young criminal children and older and more dangerous criminals, of how white Johannesburg was afraid of black crime. During this time period, the lives of the black youth have been reduced to criminal activity and gang-related violence. The natives who originally lived on the land are now forced to deal with the lack of resources. The children are no exception to the consequences. Because of poverty and racial injustice in the city, black violence and crime increased. Therefore, black youth equals crime. The city reduces all youth to one word that they quickly eliminate the idea that some children and teens have the potential to be something more than just a criminal.
The conflict with age in the story is that there is no relation between older and younger people. The younger generation often strays away from the older generation and ends up causing trouble. The story speaks about young men and young girls that went away and forgot their customs. The younger generation is often influenced by the big city of Johannesburg and commit crimes. It seems to Miss Amangu that an old couple getting robbed and beaten happens nearly every day. This poses a problem in the city of Johannesburg and often divides the older and younger generations against each other.
Children in rural areas of the country were raised with parents who teach them discipline and manners. They have respect for the elderly and for their religion. And so the influence of community and the respect that they hold make their behavior skills exemplary in comparison to children in the city. Take the village of Ipako, for example, where Stephen Kumalo, the main character, lives. At the beginning of the story, a little girl represents all the values of children in rural areas represent. Respectful as she should be, the little girl carefully opened the door to the Reverend Stephen Kumalo's home, a letter in her hand. The child did this action as if she is afraid to open carelessly the door of so important a home. The child was not forced to bring a letter to the Reverend's home. Once asked, she obliged in respect to someone who is older. She respects the Reverend's house by opening the door carefully. Performing her job mannerly displays exemplary attitude and morals. This sign of behavior continues with many of the children throughout the story.
Children in the city environment are often disrespected to their elders. They seem to have no proper upbringing and behave disrespectfully in public settings. Most of them do not go to school because they do not care, and some because their parents do not care. Gertrude's son is a representation of the city child that is not well taken care of. When he appeared in front of Stefan, his clothes were dirty and his nose was running. Other city kids often steal from foreigners. When Stefan is at the train station, he is approached by a young man. The young man offers to show him how to get to Sophiatown. When the man takes £1 from Stefan for a bus ticket and never came back, Stefan was worried. He is then told that he has been cheated by the young man. The Johannesburg children do not behave well in comparison to the children in rural areas. The racial injustice and crime within the city can influence a child to perform unacceptable actions that evidently gets the child into trouble. In the process, a child can lose their innocence. Absalom is a character that represents great loss. His terrible choices that leads him to great distress. One of these distresses involved killing an innocent man. He carried a revolver with him for protection around the city because the area is dangerous. Because of bad influences, he shot the white man but did not mean to kill him.
The city is fueled with crime, that children are now inclined to live up with negative expectations that the adults, both black and white, have for them. This could be one of the reasons why unprivileged children get into so much trouble. The innocent is stripped of Absalom because he killed a man. He is now sentenced to death, ashamed for what he has done, and disappointed at himself because he could have prevented the loss that had happened to him. The effects the adult generation have on children can differ two ways. The conflict of the adult generation revolves around racial injustice and the discrimination. And with that comes poverty and separation of the black and white people of the land. Children are affected by this through their physical and mental well-being or growth. When a child asks a full-grown man, "Why is there no milk?" Is it because people are poor? One would wonder why a child would ask such a question. In turn, this displays the mental growth of a child. This white little boy is so curious. The knowledge he obtains affects his mental well-being. Whether his growth will spark a fire, a desire to change the conflict, or rather he does nothing about it, is totally up to him. But with great power comes great responsibility. And now that he has this knowledge and wisdom, he has the power to change what the adult generation has caused. The problem of poverty done by the adult generation affects the physical well-being of a child. Children rely so much on their parents and adults for food and support, but the country of Africa, especially in the rural areas, barely have any food, and more specifically, milk. It's very scarce. When the same little boy is speaking to Stephen Kamala about the stability of children and their health, the Reverend answers to him, "They die, my child. Some of them, they are dying now." Children are dying because of poverty and the distribution of food around the country. The adults' conflict and problems are affecting a child's future. Without the proper feeding and hydration, children will slowly die out, and whatever future that they probably would have had is now gone. In relation to the first point that I've made, it is now up to the next generation of healthy, educated children to solve the problems that the adults have started.
Good influences promote the positive growth and enhances the wisdom of a child. Children learn a lot through their influences and can be passed down information about things they haven't yet experienced. If a child has good influence around him or her, they are more likely able to have positive mental growth, whereas having bad influences tend to corrupt a child. This is demonstrated by Absalom and the negative influences around him that corrupt him. By not replying to a question from Stephen, Absalom implies that his friends were not the kind of friends that a good man could choose, upright, hardworking, and obeying of the law. This shows that having them around brought him to his corruption to the point where he killed an innocent man.
Wisdom is always obtained through experience. Although in the story, there's a child who knows less experience in life and knows great knowledge, almost greater than most adults. There's so much irony found in the scene between Arthur Jarvis's child and Stephen Kamala. He slid down from his horse and walked over to the house with the assurance of a man. The child has the confidence of a grown man and the ability and the courage to learn from Mr. Kamala. "I've come to talk Zulu again." The irony is shown in the sole fact that the child is first learning from a black man, and second, the father of the man who shot his dad. There is so much people in the world we can learn from this boy. His courage is not only to interact with a black man, but to learn Zulu from an enemy has shown great strength and forgiveness. There is so much power and wisdom in these scenes because it really shows how two generations can come together, how enemies can put aside their differences and forgive, and finally how different races can unite and be equals. This little boy represents hope for all men and women, that one generation can make a mess, but the next generation is there to pick up the pieces. Mr. Kamala states some wonderful and true facts about this young boy. When you go, something bright will go out of Nindashini.
Age does not bring a person wisdom. Wisdom is obtained through knowledge and understanding. A child is able to obtain wisdom without experience by learning from his or her elders. A child's brain is able to obtain information similar to an adult, so there can be no division of wisdom by age. In the case of Theophilus Misimangu, there is great wisdom in a young priest. Misimangu is one of the young priests at the mission house, and he often guides and accompanies Kamala about his journeys through South Africa. Misimangu shows that you do not need to be old to have wisdom, and that wisdom can be obtained by anyone at any walk of life. In Patton's novel, Cry the Will of the Country, Misimangu expresses his thoughts of the injustices of South Africa. He reveals that there is only one thing that has power completely, and that is love. Misimangu shows that he has wisdom beyond his years.
Youth and age is a very important theme in this novel, and I hope you learned something from our documentary. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for listening.